learn. Our media people are people who reduce any election campaign for a high office. They'll reduce it to a horse race. Now, on the side, if you'll understand this, they are running bets on the side of the horse track because they are promoting those horses who will enrich them. These most scurrilous of political actors are the reporters who play with and toy with our system to enrich themselves. They're not patriots, I can promise you this. They are, well, half of them are just out of college, and then just do what they're told. And then they usually don't publish what they write. But when they get on the big stories, you're not going to find too many of the Watergate Washington Post crew out there. Robert Redford playing Bob Woodward and Dustin Hoffman playing Carl Bernstein. Now, I've met Bob Woodward at the Washington Post for a journalist convention event, and he just happened to be in the hallway talking to David Broder. But Bob Woodward doesn't look much like Robert Redford. He's really pretty boring, actually. But the point I want to make about Watergate is that these guys just about lost their jobs. Nobody was interested in or would publish what they were doing, Watergate. Now, why is that? Because of what I'm just telling you. That the political press and the newspapers and the press in general are corrupt. They're in bed with the money. They're in bed with whatever campaign they can get the money to throw a little bit their way. Is that corruption? That's corruption. They're only interested in paying customers, not independent Americans, and they need that money. For many media establishments, this is the only time of year they can get rich, and everything about our media today is self-promotion. Now, I am promoting my campaign, distributing this YouTube video. But that's part of a dialogue, of discussion. We together have a duty to govern ourselves, and in order to do that, we need to discuss issues. If you'll notice my campaign, well, people must think I'm crazy because that's all I do is discuss issues. But having been a political leader, and I should say student, university student, and having been a litigator, I have things in the Supreme Court right now. They're totally valid, they're cutting edge, and they're something that's protecting and restoring democracy against Mark Dayton and the Minnesota DFL and the duopoly. All my litigation is based on a sound understanding of the law and Constitution. And I can tell you, courts are corrupt too. And Elijah Cummings, Representative Elijah Cummings of Maryland, who you must have seen leading the charge to help Hillary Clinton, is an excellent example of a corrupt lawyer. A guy who just writes a script, gets up there, stays away from the truth, avoids the truth, and only takes his public shots at the other side. Now, this stuff is so bad that, well, they do it, but ethical rules prohibit lawyers from doing this. Here's a good example of how strict in the court they can be. The Ventura jury finds that statements said about Jesse Ventura of the Minnesota Independence Party, who wants to run for president this year, seeking the endorsement of the Libertarian Party. I don't need to tell you he's the one who became the governor. Which sources say he might get that endorsement of the Libertarian Party. That he was defamed then by those false words by Chris Kyle. And right now they're trying to throw the verdict of $1.8 million, cut it down to about $500,000. Because his lawyers at some point in the trial, I guess, mentioned that the other side had an insurance policy. Now that's a very, very strict rule. And I'm not accusing Ventura's lawyers of doing this. I assume they did not. But I'm only showing the restraints on lawyers in a legal proceeding that politicians before the media are not bound by. I don't know if Ventura will lose that or not. I am not familiar with, oral argument before the jury in his case. I certainly wasn't there. But I can tell you this, that there's no such rules governing Elijah Cummings. And so you, the voters, are the court. You're the judges in this case of Benghazi. And if you take your responsibility and going online during the hearing, looking at some of the discussion at hashtag Benghazi hearing on Twitter, I can tell you that about maybe 2% of the people there take it seriously. Probably a little bit higher. Some of the conservatives are concerned about the shoddy treatment of this issue. But most of the people, they'll come and talk about something else. Well, what about this person that something happened to? Who cares about Chris Stevens? Look at these other things. This is the kind of irresponsibility you get. But if you do take that position as a judge seriously, then you would be frustrated by the antics and unethical tactics of Hillary Clinton and her able partisan on the committee, Elijah Cummings from Baltimore, Maryland. You can see how his leadership has benefited that unfortunate city. And Cummings was totally unrestrained. And that is a lawyer that is not restrained by the ethical rules of the bar. They get up there and run their politics, all bets are off. And actually our so-called press finds these kinds of showboats like Elijah Cummings to be hugely entertaining and colorful. And that certainly showed up in the hearing.